Let's talk a little bit about empathy.
It can either be taken as a fluff word, or it can be taken to be a very, very serious, thoughtful concept. I would like to believe that global leaders always have an ability to empathize. An ability to empathize does not mean that you say something and I say, I agree with you, because I may not.
Right.
But I do not question your legitimacy in questioning your position, right? So a lot of leadership is about taking tough decisions. A lot of leadership ends up being about having to not do what someone is asking you to do in choosing something else. But it is in the act of how one does it. And so that empathy and goes back to a word that you use, which is dignity. It is different for me to say, I disagree with you, and say it in a way that delegitimizes not just your argument, but yourself, your dignity. And it is different for me to say, I can see where you come from. I cannot see myself agreeing with that. But I can understand the historical concept, the sense of injustice, the sense of obligation, whatever it is, that makes you believe that which you believe. And I think leaders as problem solvers, because ultimately I do think leaders have to be problem solvers, need that ability to interact with people, to connect with people, to empathize with their view even when they may not fully agree with it. And I think this again goes to that bridge versus wall thing. I can build a bridge to you and then say I'm going to take the other bridge. So, but come along with me.
But one of the real issues that we've really got to deal with are inequities and how we rectify past inequities and ensure some sense of equality going forward in the future, as an example.
Yeah. I think equity is critical, but I would tag on to the first word, which is justice. Now I do so first because my name Adil derives from the Arabic Adl, which means the just. It's one of the 99 names of God. It's one of the qualities is to be just. So I take justice very, very seriously. But I think we are going to confront questions of justice again and again and again. And in some ways we have shied away from questions of justice because they are tough questions. And in our mechanicistic mode, they're not easy questions to. Questions of efficiency, universities give me the ability to answer. Right? I can do a cost-benefit analysis and say, this is cheaper than this. This takes less effort than this. Questions of efficiency are easy. I confront a question of justice, and now I really have to confront it. There is no other way but an ethical, moral framework from which to confront it. And I think many people, many leaders are shy of questions of justice. They hide behind numbers. They like to have graphs and figures and Excel sheets because they guard them from these big moral questions. Unfortunately, the world is not going to allow us. And if you again think about history, I think again and again you find that great leader. And the greatness partly comes because they do confront the question of justice. They can do it with empathy. There is a Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela does not have to leave the notion of justice in order to talk about the notion of reconciliation. Right? And when that bridge is made, right, I think it's one of the most amazing moments of my life to see that concept being connected, because a vengeful notion of justice does not have room for reconciliation. Right? That becomes selling out. But a notion of justice that comes from empathy does have room for it. And that's, I think, the questions of today. Right? And you can, if I take sort of an odd example, if you think about people who claim to assert global leadership, you have this most horrific, this most inhuman idea in Baghdadi and what's called Daesh or ISIS of asserting a leadership on an argument of justice, right, from his perspective. But it is an entirely non-empathetic. In fact, it's the absolute opposite of savagery. And the question then for the world is, how do you respond to that? Right? And that's not a question that we have easy answers for. So I think the question of justice is central to the ethical leader. If I can go out on a limb, my sense is that those questions are very often the distinction. That ethical leaders are leaders who do not shy away